Hi everyone, Eitan is here. Thank you for joining us today for another video of the 3D printing experts. Today I'm here with Joe. Maybe you know him as the 3D printing professor. So Joe, go ahead and explain a bit about yourself.
Hi guys, my name's Joe, and yeah, I'm the 3D printing professor on YouTube. I've been doing 3D printing for a very long time on many different 3D printers, but my real love and emphasis is in design. I love to make things for 3D printing. I'm terrible. I hardly ever print stuff that other people have designed because I'm too busy making cool stuff to print for myself. But I've also had a lot of ups and downs and learning experiences along the way as I've been, as I try to print something and it doesn't work and I have to get better at it. And 3D printers now are so much better than they were when I first started, but I've got this backlog of years of information that I think I love to bring and teach people. Teaching's kind of in my blood, and that's kind of what my YouTube channel is all about.
Awesome. So Joe was very kind and agreed to make an interview about 3D printing. So Joe, my first question to you is, how did you start using 3D printing?
So it's kind of funny. I first heard about 3D printing. So I have a varied history. I was working in software development at the time, but before that, I had actually studied computer animation. At one point, I wanted to be a computer animator, not because I wanted to make, work for Pixar or anything like that. Mostly, I think I wanted to use that as a platform to teach. And I thought, yeah, computer animation degree, that's an easy degree. I can get that easy. That didn't work out. It was just not to be, and so I went into software development. Then I heard about the RepRap project, and I immediately got the idea. I understood what this idea of a handful of $800 worth of parts that you slap together and it builds things. I understood 3D printing the moment I heard about this RepRap project, but I couldn't afford to do it. But I did have design skills. I had learned how to 3D model. So that's what I started to do. I started 3D modeling and I started making models for 3D printing, and I would upload them on Thingiverse. Now, if you go to Thingiverse now, it's vast and it's huge and it's growing by leaps and bounds every day. But back then, the incoming feed was actually slow enough that you could be noticed on there. And I created a couple of things. I uploaded a Chinese chess set, and somebody out in Massachusetts across the country said, "Ooh, that's cool. I'm going to print that." And I was like, "Ooh, could you print me one?" Because I didn't have a 3D printer. He printed me one, and once I held that in my hand, man, I was doomed. There was no hope for me. I was going to be doing 3D printing for the rest of my life, because it was just amazing to have. I knew every turn and every part of this design because I made it, but I hadn't made this. A machine had made that real. It was unbelievably cool. Now, I didn't buy a 3D printer even then, though. I still had a young family. I couldn't afford it. So I just saved my pennies. But then there started to be a series of contests that were do the contest, first prize 3D printer. And I entered as many of those as I could. The one that finally won me a 3D printer was for a chess set. If you go out online and look for the robot action chess set, it's a chess set that Voltrons together into a robot. And ultimately cool because it got me this 3D printer, and I've been 3D printing ever since.
That's a great introduce. How do you start? And can you describe your first time experience with a 3D printer?
Yeah, and I actually documented the whole thing. So I started a blog immediately afterward called Joe's MakerBot. And if you go back to the earliest posts, I'm like unboxing it and super excited. And I don't think I ran the test print on it. Even back then, like my first 3D printer, I was like, I've got things I want to print. I'm not going to run a test print. So I was trying to print this chess set, and I ran into problems like day one. I couldn't get it to stick to the build plate. I couldn't get it. It didn't work. And then I finally broke down and said, fine, I'll print the test print. And the test print was a one of those shark clips. It's out there it's a classic on Thingiverse, but it's a shark, kind of low poly shark shape with jaggy teeth that supposedly you could slide paper into if you had the exact right amount of paper. It was janky as all get out. But that one was my first successful print. It was the demo print. And at that point I went, okay, it's not the printer, it's obviously my settings. And so I dove into and learned the settings to make it work, and eventually started getting good prints out of it. So my first print was the demo print on the printer, but I did not want that to be my first print.
And how complicated it was for you to use 3D printing at the beginning?
Yeah, I mean, this old 3D printer was definitely very much a manual process. If not a manual process, it felt like a manual process. You were needing to be constantly aware of every setting and everything that you were doing. And we were also printing in ABS back there, so it was also about building an enclosure to go around your 3D printer to try and keep that heat in. And I had a blanket draped over the top just because I couldn't afford, a nice enclosure on the top at the time. It was, when people talk about, oh, we're 3D printer is going to change the world, it will, but not today. It's got a lot. It's still very much a tool that requires a steady hand behind it to use it well.
Yeah, totally get it. And how long it took you to master 3D printing?
Oh, I was a master day one. No, I don't know. I don't know if there was a point where like the hour hand moved up and I moved from, not good to master. It was a series of discrete movements and discrete changes. And I don't know at what point I finally sat back and said, man, I am good at this. I really do deserve to be out in front of people and be considered an expert in this field. And I wouldn't even say, so I started with the blog, and that blog got the attention of a publisher, and that publisher said, hey, can you make some books about 3D printing? So I made a couple of books about 3D printing. Well, obviously, then I'm an expert. And yeah, when you hold a book in your hand that you've authored, you could go, hey, this is it, I've arrived, I'm an expert. But I didn't feel like an expert even then.
Yeah.
And then I started making YouTube videos, and I said, I call myself the 3D printing professor, and it's a lofty title. But I do that because I was teaching college at the time. I was 3D printing. I was a professor. It's not because I thought that I was a particularly good 3D printer. And so people still on my videos all the time are like, hey, you call yourself the 3D printing professor, but you don't know this. Nobody knows everything. We all are still learning, and we should all learn together. I call myself the 3D printing professor because I was a professor and I was 3D printing. I don't know of anybody who's an expert at this. We are all just growing along this path together, I think. And there are some of us who started earlier, and there are some of us who spend more time on it. But that doesn't make anybody a master of it. That just makes us older at it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And hopefully, once people will use our technology, you don't need to master anything. All the things will be set automatically. So,
well, honestly, I would love that. And you showed me a little bit of your technology before we started, and I am super impressed by it. And yes, it's taking away from people options, but I've said for years, if we can take away options from people but make it so that everybody can use a 3D printer as easily as pushing buttons on a microwave, then we didn't really need those fancy settings in the first place. Yes, vase mode, where it manipulates the file and cuts the top off of it. Yes, it's cool. But why not make a vase with a fixed thickness of a wall and get the same effect,
yeah.
There are still, I think, edges that we can push and things that we can play with. And I think that there will always be an audience for that. But I think the greater audience is going to benefit so much from Princess. Seriously.
Okay, thank you for your feedback. The next question is, how did you find 3D printing helps you in your daily lives?
It's funny. When I started 3D printing, I was printing useless crap. And I feel like everybody needs to print a certain amount of useless crap in 3D printing. But my wife was immediately like, do something useful with this thing. And she is always going, okay, this thing in the house needs to be fixed, and this thing could be better. And if you're going to do this thing, can you do it with 3D printing? And can you save us a buck and do it with 3D printing and things like that? And so my wife is always the one who's pushing and challenging the useful side of 3D printing. But me, man, I print baby Groots all day long. You know, I enjoy the useless prints. And I've said in a video, my video about in defense of useless prints, or can 3D printing make anything useful, I think is what it was called, that those useless prints are oftentimes harder than the useful prints. And so they build the skills that you use.
I get it. That's it. You need to bring your wife to the interview as well, so she can say about all of those.
She's here whether she's on camera or not. She's always a part of my life.
That's true. And what is your favorite 3D printing effect for those who doesn't know?
3D printing effect as in like a cool setting that you can do on 3D printing and have it do something cool. I'm playing right now with what is called velocity painting, where you take a model and you either print it faster or slower, and that changes the viscosity of the material and makes an optically different appearance with it. And you can use that to make patterns appear on what would otherwise be flat or solid surfaces. And I think that that's really cool, but it's one of those settings that it only works with certain filaments. It's an extremely limited case. I'll tell you honestly, the 3D printing effect that I'm more interested in is the DaVinci Color. My DaVinci Color is in the shop right now. I need to do some work on it. But the idea of taking a 3D printer and embedding full color prints on it layer by layer, and their technique for doing it allows for millions of colors, high precision colors, quick changes from one to the other. It's multi-material can't do this, and mixing in the nozzle can't do this. This is the only way that this could be done, and I love it in a lot of ways. It's really, I think, opened up my design possibilities, and at the same time increased my design time, because when you're just making geometry, you can stop when you're done and just be like, yep, that's it. It's got all the shapes that I want. But when you have to add color to it, you're like doubling your design time, because you got to UV map it and put it on there and start. Oh my goodness.
It's a long process.
Well, I am constantly in awe of the people who I see doing really, really cool 3D modeling. I'm on several Blender YouTube channels and watching them do these time lapses where they're doing this amazing modeling and then going over and doing amazing coloring and texturing of it, and layers of textures, one on top of the other with incredible blending. Oh, it's gorgeous. I can't consider myself a master because I see these people work and just effortlessly doing this. And it's taking them 5 and 6 and 8 hours that they're compressing into a 20-minute time lapse. But it's gorgeous, gorgeous work.
Yeah, it is. For those who doesn't know, so Joe, you are, for me, as I know, you are the low poly master.
I don't know if I'd be the low poly master. I think that particular title goes to Flowlistic. He's been doing low poly since long before I have, but I do enjoy low poly. I think it's a great aesthetic.
Yeah, I'm agree with you. Can you share this? What are the benefits of using low poly in 3D printing?
Yeah, I've got a low poly print here, of course, within arm's reach. Unfortunately, the head fell off. I'm going to have to glue him, but this is my low poly.
How does that happen?
Yeah, well, it's a hollow print. I printed this with 0% infill, and I'm thinking one day I'm going to maybe cut a hole in the mouth and turn it into a piggy bank that you can just feed coins into, and it'll go down the body. But the thing about low poly is it's got a brilliant, pretty aesthetic. Even at this size, you blow it up, and nobody looks at it and goes, "Oh, that looks terrible because it's facety." They say, "Oh, that looks brilliant because now I can see the facets even bigger." As an aesthetic, It works in the big scale, but it also works in the small scale. One of my earliest low poly projects, sorry, I made some spaceships, and they're teeny tiny. Like, they will fit on your fingernail and not even hit the edges. They are tiny. And the only way that I could make them print that small, I discovered early, at least with early slicers, I think modern slicers have fixed this, but with early slicers, if you had 10,000 corners in a space 2 millimeters wide, it tried to print every single one of those corners, which resulted in a very, very jaggy print. So back then, in order to get away with very small things, I had to design them very low poly. Now, I never thought about blowing these spaceships up, but you totally could, and they would still look good. So the advantages in that case for low poly was they allowed the early 3D printers to make a good looking print. But it's a good aesthetic, and it also cuts design time just in just an order of magnitude. It's much easier to design. I hate to admit that, because basically I'm saying I cheated by doing low poly because I cut out a large portion of my design phase, but I cheated by doing low poly by cutting out a large portion of my design phase.
Yeah. I get it. All right, so if someone wants to start design in digital environment, what will be the best computer-aided design platform that you will suggest?
In the makerspace, I actually have 3 suggestions that I make for people. And they're all free software. I think it's amazing that we live in an age where there are so many fantastic and free options for people to get started. The first one that I recommend to people is Tinkercad. I have never seen anybody who couldn't just pick up Tinkercad, immediately get the idea, and start designing something. And Tinkercad has some serious robustness. That robot action chess set that got me my 3D printer at the beginning, that was created in Tinkercad. It has the capability of doing beautiful, fine interlocking pieces and designs and things like that. It's not crippled. It's just not capable of doing what some of the big boys can do in the ways that some of the big boys can do it. It's very object based, and as such, it's very material, but that makes it easy to use. So my first suggestion to people is start with Tinkercad. Then it kind of branches. After you're done with Tinkercad, are you more of a design person, or are you more artistic? If you're more artistic, I would recommend Blender. I really would. And a lot of people poo-poo Blender because, oh, it's got such a huge learning curve. It's not as bad as you think. If you just jump in and do it, you get over that learning curve really fast. You just got to change that setting from left mouse click or right mouse click to left mouse click, and all of a sudden the whole program makes sense. I don't know why that's not the default. Yeah. If you're artistic, Blender. But if you're not, if you're more of the CAD side, if you like working with a drawing and getting the measurements all in place and extruding that out, Fusion 360 is the tool for you. And a lot of people are doing some great things with Fusion 360. I just can't. Every time I run into a wall with Fusion 360, I'm like, I could do this in Blender, and I turn off Fusion 360. I'm a terrible, terrible student. I really
am. That's a good answer, I have to admit. What is the best 3D printing usage in your opinion?
Now, this is a very, very interesting question, and it's one that I've been really scratching my head about. What is the best usage for 3D printing? I mean, okay, it does great prototypes, and that's a standard answer that you'll hear from people who are manufacturing 3D printing. It's great for prototypes, and yes, it's fantastic for prototypes. I worked at a company where they got a 3D printer, and it so changed the way that they worked on a fundamental level. And I was seeing innovation after innovation come up in their design process. It was amazing. And if you want to know more about that, you can go, I think, to my old blog where I've just updated 3dpprofessor.com with all of my old blog posts. So search 3DP Professor for a blog post called If You Give an Engineer a Toy. And you'll see about my adjacent adventures with people using 3D printing for prototyping. So that should be the answer. It's great for prototyping.
Yeah, I also put a description as well, so people can find it easily.
Yep, yep. But I don't want that to be the answer, because I don't want anybody to who is not into 3D printing to go, "Oh, well, I've got this thing that I want to do with 3D printing," and go, "Well, he said that it's good for prototyping, so obviously it's not good for this, so I'm not going to do my idea." So no, that's not the answer. The answer is whatever you want to make. If you want to make something and you think 3D printing could do it, it's the best use of 3D printing. Maybe that's the answer. The answer is the best use of 3D printing is to make you a maker. Now, it might be that 3D printing is the wrong thing for that answer. A lot of times, the best solution to a problem that people have is a piece of wood or a block of clay. 3D printing is not the best answer to every problem, but getting into 3D printing, it's always a skill that's going to be a benefit to your life. And having a 3D printer is going to open up possibilities. And in a very short amount of time, I truly believe that 3D printers are going to innovate not just industry, but home life in a way that I hope to be a part of, honestly.
Yeah, me as well. Hope that 3D printing will be more involved in our daily lives. Um, do you have like a specific case that you would like to share of using 3D printing?
Well, I've got several that are documented on 3DP Professor. I've got several that I've made videos as well about. The one story that I love to tell is about the dishwasher wheel. My wife, we had a dishwasher and it kind of wiggled on the rails and it fell down one time and the wheel hit the heating element and melted a big hole in it. And my wife, this was one time when she said, "It's a piece of plastic. You've got a 3D printer. Make me a new wheel." So I started measuring and modeling and trying to decide how I'm going to do this. And I was big on supporting, printing support lists at the time. And I'm fussing with this thing, trying to do it. And then I get bored and I go online to a user group and somebody has posted a picture of the exact dishwasher wheel that I needed to print, say, "Hey, I just 3D printed this." And I contacted them and I said, "Hey, can I get the STL?" And they're like, "Oh, I think I downloaded it on Thingiverse." I was literally reinventing the wheel. The model was already out there for me. So I went and got the model, 3D printed it, slapped it on the dishwasher. And my wife said, "Well, okay, but it's still wiggly. Couldn't you make it just a little bit longer so it held into the tracks a little bit better?" And I went, "Yes, I can totally do that." Pulled it into Blender, grabbed the vertices on the top, moved them up as high as she wanted, reprinted it, put it on the dishwasher. We had now improved the dishwasher with 3D printing. It was cool.
You need to talk again with the dishwasher company.
Yeah, well, it was an old dishwasher, and I don't know why the track had gotten wider over time, but I suspect it wasn't their fault, and if it was way out of warranty by then.
Yeah.
But
So
I think that's really one of the big powers of 3D printing is that scarcity is no longer a thing. If you've got an old thing that you can't buy the parts for, there's no reason why you can't 3D print the part for it. But you can't 3D print the part for it if you don't know how to 3D print. So learn that skill, print some stupid crap so that you get that skill set. And then when that option comes up, you'll be like, "Oh, dishwasher wheel, shoot, no problem." Just remember to search Thingiverse first before trying to reinvent the wheel.
I agree. I'm all the time says to people that if you thought about something, someone already thought about before you. So search online.
That is true a lot of the time, but that is hardly
Not
true all of the time.
100%.
No, we still need designers. We still need people who are going to solve problems. We still need people who are going to look at the world and go, "That could be better." We need people with design skills, and so it's good, I think, to learn and develop those design skills and to be able to add to that library. Now, at the same time, you know, this last Kickstarter did really well, and I'm thinking about future Kickstarters. And one Kickstarter that I would love to do that is not going to fly unless I have a good following. But what I want to do is run to the hardware store and say, hey, that's a piece of plastic, and bring it home and model it so that you could 3D print it at home. And run to the hardware store again and go, that's also a piece of plastic, and bring it home and model it and make 20 variations of it and make just an expansive library of useful stuff that you may never need 90% of, but when you need that 1% of, you'll be glad that it's there. And I feel like if we could take this library of a hardware store in 3D print form and couple that with a nice platform to make 3D printing easy, that you can maybe just type in and say, hey, 3D print me a dishwasher wheel for this dishwasher, and it'll go out and find that model, do it all for you. That's when 3D printing will go over the hump and be the sort of thing that is so that's the replicator in Star Trek, where you walk up and go, tea, Earl Grey, hot, and it already knows, okay, I know what tea is, I know what Earl Grey is, let's put those together and let's make the tea. That's what 3D printing needs, and you guys are like that close to it.
I'm looking forward for this Kickstarter campaign. I'm looking forward.
Well, the next one's probably going to be animals, and you know, I gotta build my following a little bit, because that is not a Kickstarter that people are going to like. Strangers are not going to go backing that Kickstarter.
I get it.
You think about that Kickstarter. You hit the webpage and you go, bunch of useful crap for 3D printing. I don't need 90% of this stuff. Why would I back this Kickstarter? No. Yeah. But if I could sell like 1,000 people on it and it's already successful and they're like, whoa, library of 100 things? Oh, heck yeah, sign me up, you know, that's when it'll succeed.
So my last question is, what was your first print and what is your favorite print?
So my first print, like I said, was that little shark clip. And it was not my favorite. I don't think I have it anymore. My favorite print, you know, the problem is that's always changing. I still really love my robot action chess set. My robot action chess set is and continues to be a classic, and it's one that a lot of people are impressed. I mean, it is. You see this robot, then you pull it apart and it's a chess set. It's impressive. It's not one that it's not a print that I can do and do over again and over again and over again, because it's really, you got to get tolerances on that just perfect. And so I'm not printing those regularly. I'm working on a volcano right now that I need to do a new print of it that's going to be smoking when I do it. And that one, I'm looking forward to that one. My Doctor Who chess set, I'm really proud of that. It doesn't seem to catch on. Like, a lot of people don't get it, but I'm like, come on, this is Doctor Who, and it's every incarnation. I like that one, and so I guess my likes are less popular than the populace. But you know what? I'm going to say it. Doctor Who chess set. That's my favorite one.
Would you like, for the end of the video, would you like to share the donation that you're making for the hospital, as I saw from the last video?
Absolutely, yeah. So I've got my Christmas tree here to remind people about that. But last year I made a Christmas tree project. This year I'm making another Christmas tree, but it's going to be a full-size Christmas tree. Basically, all I want is a bunch of 3D printed decorations to hang on this Christmas tree, and I'd like your help to do it. If you have a 3D printer, I'd love you to 3D print me an ornament or even a lithophane. Oops. For that we'll take and put on a little clip, and we'll put it in the clip and hang this on the tree, and then we'll put a light behind it so that you can see. And I've got a whole video showing you how to make these lithophanes. They're super easy. Just drop a picture to Cura, done and done. And just print it, mail it to me, and I'll put it on the Christmas tree. And this Christmas tree will be used to raise money for Children's Hospital in Salt Lake City. So the better we can make this Christmas tree, the more decorations we can get on it, the better. So please help me out. Print an ornament, send it to me, and a card, wherever cards are. Hopefully you'll put a card in this video so that they can go see that Christmas tree project, because I need your help to make this happen.
Great. Awesome. So Joe, thank you very much for joining this video. It was awesome to hear from someone like you that has such an experience in the 3D printing field to give you your perspective. I appreciate your time, and I think that's it.
Well, and thank you, Ethan. I really appreciate what you guys are doing. I'm excited for what I've seen of PrintSys, and I can't wait to see what you guys come up with.
Great, thank you, and see you guys on the next video. Bye.
All right.